Warcraft III is a legendary game by many metrics. Some would say it revolutionized RTS games and was probably the best in its genre. It's a prelude to the legendary game that we cover on this channel pretty much every day, World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft's development actually started in a heavily modified version of the Warcraft III engine. The RPG elements that we see in WoW today actually came from the initial versions of Warcraft III, but we will get to that later. First we got to go back to the beginning of Warcraft 3's development. At that time, Blizzard was already a major powerhouse in the RTS genre. They just released Warcraft 2 and the first StarCraft game, amazing games in their own rights. Blizzard had high ambitions after this. They started publishing novels set in their universes and even thought about expanding to the FPS genre with StarCraft Ghost and point-and-click adventure game genre with Warcraft Adventures, Lord of the Clans. Both of these games got scrapped sadly, but a lot of the elements from them would carry on to majorly affect the future stories and development of StarCraft and Warcraft respectively. Warcraft 3 had two precursor games, Warcraft Adventures Lord of the Clans, the before mentioned point-and-click adventure game, and a game called Warcraft Legends. This mysterious Warcraft Legends game was described as being a squad-based tactical game centered around heroes and role-playing elements. This game too was eventually scrapped, so Blizzard got the idea of mixing story elements from Warcraft Adventures Lord of the Clans and gameplay elements of Warcraft Legends into one game, Warcraft 3. But Warcraft 3 back in the day was way different than what we have today. It was not even an RTS game. It wasn't even called Warcraft 3 at first, rather it was called Heroes of Warcraft. As you can see from these preview screenshots, the game had a very similar graphics and art style as the final Warcraft 3, but the point of view was pretty much in third person. Well, almost. I mean, you could at least see the skies, right? Another big graphical difference is that the buildings are actually almost to scale. As you can see, the heroes are much smaller than the buildings. In Warcraft 3, the heroes and buildings are pretty much the same size, which is kinda jarring when you think about it, but I guess we all just got used to it and stopped thinking about it. But this was pretty much some of the earliest Warcraft 3 or Heroes of Warcraft gameplay that we could see. At the end of 1999 and at the start of the year 2000, this is how the game would look like. It was very much a role-playing strategy game. There was no fog of war and you didn't actually make a huge army to fight battles like you did in Warcraft 1 and 2, but you were actually in charge of a party of heroes and troops. The game world was not just a map where the goal is to destroy the enemy base, rather it's described as being a world of living towns, wandering monsters, characters, and quests. The game was apparently a lot more micromanagey and your heroes would have a leadership skill. Depending on how high your hero's leadership skill was, the more troops you could have in your party. In these screenshots from the year 2000, you can see how some of the unit models are pretty similar or even the same to what we got in the final product. However, the gameplay, the UI and even the camera frames are completely different. There is no map of the game world, rather you just have this angled minimap in the bottom right corner. The spells being in the middle of the bottom of the screen is very much what we still use to this day in World of Warcraft. This is probably the earliest version of the action bars from WoW that we can see. There was also some sort of dungeon system available, as you can see here on this image scan, that there was this skull cave that would trigger a cutscene when you get near it. This is probably a really early version of the dungeons that we would later get in World of Warcraft. According to the programmer Andrea Piscino, the game was supposed to be a client-server online game, very instanced, with this over-the-shoulder camera and full 3D. It was exactly what Guild Wars eventually became. The game's release was set for late 2000s, but that would not come to pass as things were about to change. Eventually, this whole concept was scrapped. Mike Morhaime was the one who finally decided that the game should go back to being an RTS game like the previous titles, and the development on Warcraft 3 as we know it today would start somewhere around this time, in the year 2000. The developers who put their effort into the RPG elements of the game would leave and would actually be the ones who made the before mentioned Guild Wars game. At some point, work on World of Warcraft would begin from the code of Warcraft 3, taking the RPG elements of the game and some would even say perfecting them. As you can see, the development of Warcraft 3 actually spawned some of the biggest MMORPGs in the world, World of Warcraft and Guild Wars. It was around this point that the game would become an early version of Warcraft 3 that we would grow up with and love to this day. The UI was a bit different, some of the buildings were different too, but the general game does feel the same. Probably the biggest difference is the number of factions that would be included with the game. This number seems to be very different depending on the developer you would talk to. The numbers range from 6 to 13 different factions. The two races that all developers agreed on were of course the Human Alliance and the Orcish Horde. Later on, the Undead Scourge got announced with a heavy focus on spiders and ice. Burning Legion was even announced as a playable race, and also as an April Fool's joke, the Pandaren Empire got announced as a playable faction. There was even an experimental dragon race that would only have one unit that would start as a whelp and then grow during the match. This didn't really fit in well with the resource gathering and other RTS elements of the game and was eventually scrapped. The story was kinda similar to what we eventually got, though there are some big differences. Some notable differences would be having Garona Halforken play a role in the story, Uther the Lightbringer being blind, the idea of which would eventually become Illidan Stormrage. The Alliance was supposed to have been through a civil war sometime before the story of the game. There were some type of mutated Murlocs that would play a role in the story, probably what would eventually become the Naga, and the Undead Scourge was actually made from the OG Death Knights from Warcraft II, who were excommunicated by the Horde and would be led by Ner'zhul. They were also fully independent from the Burning Legion. Jaina was also planned to die at some point and was to be raised as a Banshee, which was eventually scrapped, and Sylvanas Windrunner would be the one who became a Banshee. As time passed, the story and the game were changed bit by bit, and eventually we got Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos. I was always a fan of old, scrapped game development stuff. I love rummaging through old game magazines and finding fun tidbits like this. Game manuals are also a big source of lost information, so if you know something that I failed to mention, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video or learned something new, leave a like, and if you want to see more videos like this, feel free to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.